Disappointed with life, a young Japanese student ends up being sent to a world about to go to war, where he becomes the chosen one to become the next ruler. To survive in this place, he will have to learn to trust people more, especially those who trust him the most. In a mysterious temple, Princess Kikuri speaks to her followers, the 12 Shinshou, saying that in 3 days they will finally perform the ceremony to put a new princess in her place. The Shinshou in turn swear eternal loyalty to the princess. Meanwhile, the Japanese student Hinohara Arata meets his friend Subaru on the way to school and lends him a video game. At school, he takes a running test and at one point feels a little strange. The teacher tells him he did well but slowed down at the end, but the student denies it and also admits he is not a big fan of sports. In the stairwell, he is confronted by the bully Kadawaki, who seems to have known him since elementary school. After this, he hears Subaru himself admitting to the bullies that he is not really Arata's friend, and this leaves the guy extremely frustrated. Suddenly, we are taken to the other world, where another guy named Arata is charged by his grandmother Makari to give up a certain decision. Later, it is revealed that she wants this boy to become a woman of the Han clan, to become the princess during the ceremony, but he only finds this impossible. The girls of the Union clan want to help him dress as a woman, but he knows that he can't become a princess even if he dresses like one. It turns out that only a daughter of the Han clan who possesses the Amatsureki power can rule the Amawakumi kingdom, but because he is a boy, he has no such power. The old woman keeps insisting, saying that the clan hasn't had a daughter for the past 60 years and the ceremony should take place every 30 years, so if he doesn't accept, the whole clan will be punished for treason. She tells him that he needs to protect the Hayagami Goshinte, which was inherited from their ancestors, while a rusty sword is shown in a corner. With no option, Arata is taken to the temple dressed as a woman accompanied by his friend Kotoha. He goes to a kind of circular altar surrounded by 12 bridges leading to the Shinshou huts. Princess Kikuri appears without him noticing, and the guy notices that she looks very young for someone who has ruled for 60 years. She puts her hand on his forehead when the stones on the ceiling begin to glow and greenish flames appear between the bridges. Suddenly, one of the Shinshou named Kanaji appears and attacks the princess by surprise with his sword, causing the flames to disappear. Kikuri tries to defend herself with a wind attack and falls under an aura of green lines. Kanaji realizes that Arata is a boy but tells him that he will not be able to stay alive. The guy tries to call for help, but the other Shinshou remains still. Kanaji speaks that this is the revolution of the 12 Shinshou. However, Arata runs away and jumps into the water. Kanaji appears outside the temple and accuses Arata of having taken the princess' life, saying that he dressed as a woman to do this, thus mobilizing the troops of the nation to look for the supposed traitor. The boy enters the Kando forest and Konoha goes after him. Meanwhile, in Japan, the student Arata is walking while thinking about what happened at school. He wishes to disappear, and suddenly the two are taken to another place, one floating facing the other near the forest on an island. In this way, they become energies and exchange places. The student Arata appears in the forest and is almost hit by an arrow. Kanaji still recognizes him and tells him to surrender. The boy is confused, but Shinshou thinks it's just an effect of the forest. Out of nowhere, Arata is teleported to a place where Kotoha finds him and embraces him, but the boy doesn't recognize her. The two return to the village where Kotoha tells his grandmother about the princess, and that Arata has been accused of treason. He tries to explain that he is not the Arata she is talking about, but when she tells him about the Kando forest, Makari understands what happened. After he tells her that he is from Japan, the old woman says that in her eyes he still looks like her grandson. The boy wants to go back to Japan, but Mrs. Makari says it's no good. He will have to live in Arata's place from here. But the guy doesn't want to be persecuted as a criminal. At this moment, Kanaji appears and takes Kotoha hostage. The old woman goes to him and tries to cover up the boy's presence, while the girl tells him that she trusts Arata, and upon hearing this, he makes a decision. The guy faces the enemy, admitting that he is afraid but will not stand by while they hurt someone who trusts him. When a guard tries to attack, Arata escapes by accident and knocks over the rusty sword, then picks it up to defend himself. With the boy's strength of will remembering the troubles he had in Japan, a part of the sword begins to glow, but Kanaji says that only the chosen one can carry a Hayagami, and shows it while conjuring his own power, the Homura Fire Hayagami. Makari tells him to say, "Show up," and as he does this command, the light shines even brighter and projects a shield of energy that protects the guy as the rust from the weapon disappears. Fire begins to spread through the house. Kanaji makes Hayagami himself disappear and realizes that the boy is also a shoe. After that, the roof of the house collapses. In the wreckage, the soldiers find no one else, and Kanaji becomes thoughtful about the appearance of the boy's Hayagami. Meanwhile, the trio hides in a cave where the old woman explains that in this kingdom, the gods have sword forms and are called Hayagami. Kanaji's would be the god of flames, for example. Apparently, Arata has been chosen as a shu, someone capable of using a Hayagami. After this conversation, Kotoha offers Arata's favorite food that she knows, saying that it can help him recover his memories. However, he knows that she does not yet understand that he is someone else. Not hungry, he refuses the food. He sits by a lake and remembers the problems he had at school with the bullies and with his own friend whom he trusted. Kotoha appears and still insists that he eat. She is very hopeful that he will get his memories back, even though he tries to explain that he is not the Arata she knows. The girl simply acts as if nothing makes sense, repeating the things he says as if she understood like a drunken conversation, and then hugs him. Meanwhile, the old woman realizes that there are people approaching. After the hug, Kotoha realizes that Arata doesn't have Mishi no Tama, a necklace with a pendant given as a gift by the princess. She thinks he has lost his, so she gives the boy her own necklace. He finally tries the food and praises the taste, but suddenly Kanaji and the others appear with Makari as hostage. Out of options, Arata is captured and transported in a vehicle. Inside, he ends up connecting with the necklace of the other Arata by chance who is in his room. He tries to go through the portal but can't. The other Arata explains that he didn't do it. The other one explains that he has done nothing against the princess. The one who attacked her was Kanaji, and all the Shinshou are accomplices in this betrayal. The student Arata asks if he can trust the other one because he is afraid of having his trust betrayed, just as has already occurred at school. So the other says that he doesn't need to trust, after all those who claim to be trustworthy usually aren't. He also suggests a way to differentiate the two, thank goodness for that. So he will continue to answer to Arata, and the student will answer to Hinohara for the time being. The portal begins to close when Hinohara's mother appears, but he is unable to speak to her. Later, the boy is taken to the temple for a trial where the 12 Shinshou gather in the presence of a jury to start the accusation, saying that he tried to take the princess' life to ascend to the throne. Kanaji even shows a picture of the princess and says that the Shinshou witnessed the crime but could not save her. That Hinohara begins to accuse the Shinshou themselves of having committed the crime and betrayed the princess. He is angry that they betrayed someone who trusted them and calls them murderers. Unfortunately, the Shinshou defend themselves by saying that they have served the princess for a long time and are suffering from their loss, which makes the jury take their side and ask them to apply the death penalty. Instead, Kanaji decides to expel Hinohara to a place called Gatoya, saying that he will suffer more there. A flying boat departs while we see that Kanaji chose this option in order to better understand his Hayagami. In the boat's cell, a guard appears with Kotoha saying that she came to see him and froze her inside the place. She says she is there at Makari's request and shows that she took the hidden sword. Hinohara tries to summon the power but can't. Suddenly, she begins to hear the princess calling him through the necklace. Then the two young men appear floating in the air while greenish lights form the image of Princess Kikuri, who asks for his help. She tells him that she used the Amatsuriki power to keep the Hayagami together, but now that she has fallen they are free. If the Shu start using Kembu freely, this power will dominate the world and distort justice. She is still alive but doesn't know for how long and wants Hinohara to lead the kingdom in her place, so the princess tells him to bring his Hayagami to her. The boy doesn't feel capable, but she tells him that she can only trust him. After this astral conversation, Kotoha tells him that he needs to keep this sword and shows him that the Shu can magically place the weapon in the body. His sword is placed in the palm of his hand. Finally, they arrive on the island. The place is very creepy. Inside, people keep looking at him and whispering that he is responsible for the death of the princess. Suddenly, two boys appear and ask for the guy's things but are surprised when they see the girl. The red-haired one named Kanet starts to attack and Arata narrowly dodges, but is hit in the hand and knocked down with a tripping kick. Out of nowhere, the place begins to shake and people run out, including the boys. One of the giant pipes in the place starts to move and swallows a man. Another pipe swallows another person, and a dark-haired woman named Osom appears, explaining that this was a judgment by Tsutsuga, the guardian of Gatoya. Whoever is eaten by the pipes never comes back. The woman then takes an ornament from Kotoha's hair as a feed for the information. Later, when Kotoha and Hinohara are in a hall, the place begins to shake again, and the girl falls into a hole in the ground. Arata starts running to get to the floor below but finds no direct passages, so he asks the people if anyone has seen her, but no one answers. The people recognize him as the murderer again, so the boy is forced into hiding, sad that he couldn't save his friend. When suddenly a dark specter appears asking him why he is sorry. Hinohara says he is sad because he couldn't save the one who trusted him. When the specter asks if he will betray those who trust him now, the boy ponders a little, but the apparition disappears out of nowhere, and who appears now is Osom. She tells him that there are rumors that whoever kills Arata will be freed by Tsutsuga, but it's all nonsense. He asks for information about Kotoha, and Osom says they've seen Kanet with her, but this time the woman doesn't charge for the information. A while later, Kanet himself finds Hinohara with his brother Jinchi on the ground. He jumps to conclusions and tries to attack him, but this time Arata draws his sword to defend himself. He is willing to save Kotoha. Jinchi wakes up saying it was a misunderstanding. Suddenly, another prisoner appears, but Hinohara defeats him with one blow. Jinchi explains that Arata had saved him before he passed out, but they got their hands on his ring. Kanet runs off while Jinchi and Arata go to Kotoha, who uses his healing powers on the boy. After that, Hinohara says he's willing to take Hayagami to the princess. Kotoha is happy, but they need to get out of there first. Jinchi says it's impossible because Satsuga is a Shu, a Hayagami bearer. At this point, Kana returns with the ring and gives it to her brother and thanks the youngsters for taking care of her little brother, but Arata also thanks him for taking them in. As they are all even, Kana wants to fight because he believes they can get out of there if they kill Hinohara. However, the worst happens, a time for the trial comes again, and the tubes take the older boy away, while Jinchi saves Arata's life by also being taken away in the process. Hinohara then becomes frustrated at not having been able to help the boys and is determined to save them. He thinks the boys might still be alive, so they both go through the tunnels to try to find the way, while Arata explains that he's going to face Shu Satsuga, since he would have to do it anyway to get off this island. Meanwhile, the boys are trapped on a platform by several smaller tubes like ropes. A ghostly voice speaks to them, telling the brothers to fight. The winner will be declared innocent and set free. However, Kana does not want to face his brother, but when he sees Jinchi suffering, he surrenders. Then the two are released and given their weapons. Jinchi doesn't want to fight, but Kanat says that at least one of them will be able to get off the island. Meanwhile, Hinohara and Kotoha are a little lost, but they hear the fighting and manage to get close to the platform, where they also hear Satsuga's voice. The boy jumps on the side and tells Shu to stop, but Satsuga recognizes Arata for being the Sho who cannot control Hayagami himself. Attacked by several tubes, the guy manages to dodge and talks about the boys being innocent. The guardian then tells him to pay attention to the two fighting each one for himself. Jinchi is just defending himself and asks his brother to stop, but Kanat tells him not to call him brother anymore, which reminds Arata of what his friend said at school. In one last move, Kanat advances on Jinchi and is finally hit by his little brother when we see a flashback of them meeting in the group of thieves to which they belonged. Jinchi was crying and holding the ring that was his mother's, and Kanat promised to take it back to her. When the red-haired man falls to the ground, Hinohara realizes that he lost on purpose. With a fight over, the voice says that the two are still guilty and arrests Jinchi again to finish the trial. Arata pulls out the Hayagami and cuts some tentacles until it reaches Jinchi and frees him. The tubes continue to attack Hinohara, who fights back with his sword, but suddenly a larger tube hits him, who holds on by the handle of the blade, while part of the structure is destroyed, allowing the other prisoners to see what's happening. Arata falls and attaches himself to another tube in the same way. At this moment, we see Kanaji approaching the island in a flying boat. The voice continues to tease the boy, who remembers her and the princess trusts and so concentrates, and finally releases Hayagami. The light is so strong that it even affects Kanaji's boat. The red-haired boy wakes up from the light and a sphere forms around Hinohara, which slowly descends as the tubes are disintegrated. Other darker tubes appear but disappear with Arata's power, which opens a crater where we can see an old man held by a sword on a rock, connected to several similar tubes. This is Satsuga. Where the boy touches the sword, he has a glimpse of the past in which the guardian judged an old friend for a crime and really wanted the guy to regret it on the island, but the friend betrayed him and knocked the guy down on the rock below and threw his own sword at him. With that, Shu was enraged and covered with a dark power. He eliminated his friend and covered the island with the power of shadows and giant tubes. In the present, the prisoners send the boy to take revenge on the old man, but instead, he drops Hayagami himself to try to save the guardian, drawing his sword while the dark power tries to consume him. Inside, this power tries to awaken feelings of revenge in him, but the boy resists, and the old man realizes that Arata has gone through similar problems to betrayal. Remembering Suguru, he manages to draw his sword and free the old man, revealing that he did this because of the similarity of their pasts, but that he has already forgiven what his friend did. With these words, the guardian realizes that deep down he wanted the boy to stop him. The sword loses its dark aura, revealing its true form, Sano with the Hayagami of Justice. Satsuga transforms into energy and merges with the sword, transferring this power directly to Arata's sword, giving him the Kami of Justice and asking the boy to restore the island. He then invokes Saniwa and several beams of light rise from the raised sword. Kanaji notices the changes on Gatoya as the prisoners see that the others taken during the trials have returned, even Osam's partner. When Kanaji arrives on the scene, Satsuga's voice warns of danger and tells them to flee as he appears in spectral form in front of Kanaji. He says that Arata is strong and that his Hayagami is the sword of origins that will rule this world. Meanwhile, the young men escape with the boat on which Kanat and Jinchi lived. Unfortunately, the trip ends in disaster. The boat loses its sail and begins to break up, so the youngsters end up shipwrecked on an island. They use a map to see how far they are from the capital, and they are very far away. Besides, to get there, they will have to pass through the Kanaji territory. Konoha explains that the kingdom is divided into 12 territories besides the capital. Each one is ruled by a Shinshou. Suddenly, Jinchi spots smoke and the group goes to investigate. There, the boy recognizes the camp and approaches. These are his people, and there he also meets his mother, who's thrilled to see her son after so long. Jinshi introduces Kanet, also saying that he saved him, so the mother thanks him. As these are nomadic people, they are just passing through and go to a waterfall that opens up once a month, allowing them to cross the border. Jinshi says goodbye to Kotoha and Arata and pulls Kanet by the hand, but the guy gets loose. The boy doesn't understand what's happening, but Kaneda stands still as the water falls again. He smiles at Jinshi and tells him to be happy with his family. After the passage closes, the red-haired man explains to Arata that he was part of the gang that kidnapped Jinshi in the past and could not live with his family. Afterwards, the group meets a girl named Honi and a guy named Ohika. Out of nowhere, Hinohara faints for some reason and wakes up in this man's house. Kanet tells him he had a fever and Kotoha spent the night healing him. Along with his clothes, Arata finds his cell phone and only then realizes that there was a message from Subaru. Kanet also tells him that Ohika is Kaneji's Zokusho, a Zokusho being a shoe that serves the 12 Shinshou. At that point, the man appears and Arata realizes that his sword is a Hayagami. The guy takes Kanet's spear and restores it, saying that this is also a Hayagami. With this, he tells him that his Hayagami is the Kamui Kanera used to forge agricultural and war tools, revealing that the Kamui are not only for fighting. In addition, he shows a lot of respect for Kaneji. Later, Ohika receives a visit from another Shinshou, Akashi. The youngsters listen to the conversation while Shishu tells him that Kaneji was the one who planned to kill the princess to become the king and is now chasing the boy he blamed for the crime as a scapegoat. He talks about Arata. Finally, Akashi asks Ohika to become his Zokusho. He refuses because he is loyal to Kaneji even if he is a criminal. Then Akachi draws his Hayagami and invokes the Kamui Okoro, which creates thorns of earth and renders Ohika's wife. The Shinshou tells him to submit, that is to surrender along with Hayagami, just as Satsuga did. Ohika accepts on the condition that Akashi does not hurt his wife, his servants, or the guests, and Akachi agrees. He performs a Satsuga-like ritual and turns energy along with the sword entering Shinshou's spear. But of course the man doesn't keep his promise. He attacks the handmaidens who appeared on the scene and doesn't even spare Ohika's pregnant wife. Then he finds Hinohara and the others, but Kanaji arrives at that moment. Seeing the massacre that his colleague has done, he confronts Akachi, who says that the war for the throne has begun. The two begin a Hayagami fight with Kanaji's firepower against Akachi's earth power. Kanaji begins by attacking while Akachi only defends, soon starts creating thorns everywhere, including on Kanaji's boat. He creates many more before advancing and firing several smaller spines, which Kanaji avoids with a fire attack, but is still hit by some projectiles, and Akachi appears from behind, knocking him off the boat with a kick. The guy manages to land safely, but his opponent also gets down there quickly. They exchange a blow between sword and spear that causes a shockwave so strong that it knocks Arata and the others down, but the boy uses Hayagami to slow the fall. After they move away, Kanaji invokes more fire, but Akachi mentions a certain Emisu, saying that she loved him, then knocks Kanaji's weapon to his feet and soon shows the Hayagami of the other Kanaji's Zokusho who submitted to him. In other words, Ohika was not the first to be attacked, and then he absorbs Kanaji's weapon through the earth. Akachi then begins to attack his opponent with whips of earth in the intention of forcing him into submission. He doesn't know what to do since Kanaji is the one who attacked the princess and puts the blame on him. But he doesn't want to see this act of treason, so he approaches him and tells him to stop, charging him for wanting to be a king even though he commits such evil acts against innocent people. Akachi tells him to stop this justice nonsense, but gives up on Kanagi and disappears in a cloud of dust. Before Kanaji leaves, Hinohara scolds him, saying that he knew that by taking the princess out of the game, this whole war would start. So what happened to Ohika was his fault. Kanaji doesn't listen, saying that with the princess in power, he would never have a chance to free Emisu. After Shisho leaves, Honi yells at Arata, saying that a Shu also submitted, in this case Satsuga, and that thus he is the same as Akachi. Later, Hinohara reveals to his friends that he wants to help this kingdom but doesn't like this submission war, so Kotoha mentions that Satsuga wasn't forced into submission, he did it of his own free will because he trusts Arata, and this makes him open his eyes. Kotoha also tells that Mikari told stories about a legendary Hayagami who possesses a Kamui with no offensive capabilities, the sword of origins that will rule the world, Tsukuyo. He looks at the sword and repeats this name, which makes it shine brightly again. He returns to Honi's house and says that perhaps the princess will be able to bring Ohika back. Now the boy is more willing to move on to make sure that no one else suffers. Meanwhile, in Japan, the other Arata meets the bully Katawaki in front of the school. He has been absent since his parents think the boy has some amnesia. Arata thinks that Katawaki is Hinohara's friend. Suddenly, Hinohara's mother appears and takes him away. But when she is talking to the principal, Arata is approached by other friends of Katawaki who take him to the roof of the school to be confronted by the bully. The boy shows a great deal of innocence. He climbs the railing and marvels at the view. After a few comments, he realizes that these guys are not Hinohara's friends. The bullies try to ask him for money, but Arata walks away while saying that they are weak for needing this kind of help. Angry, Katawaki tries to hit the boy, but Arata has a good reflex, and then knocks the bully out with just one blow. He finishes by saying that Hinohara is risking his life for him and will not let them keep making fun of him. In Amalakuni, Kotoha stumbles and hurts her foot. She says she's fine but can't walk properly, so the group stops to rest and Kanat sets out to look for medicinal herbs. Taking advantage that they are alone, Kotoha reveals that she likes Hinohara and feels good with him, but the guy decides to go for a walk, reflecting that she actually likes the Arata of this world and not him. And speaking of the devil, the necklace starts to glow, and again they start talking through the portal. Hinohara tells what happened to Kanagi and then asks how Arata feels about the girl. He tells him that they grew up together, so he considers her a younger sister and asks Hinohara to continue protecting her while he's in this world. Arata tells how he went to school and beat up an annoying guy named Katawaki. He calls the guy weak and asks why Hinohara has a picture with him. The boy is speechless and the portal suddenly closes. Upon returning, Hinohara is taken by surprise by Kanagi, who asks him for Tsukuyo. When the boy denies, he tries to use violence, and then several jets of fire appear around him. Kanagi explains that he cannot control this power without Homura, but underneath the ground, there is a river of lava and a little fire explodes from time to time which devours people. Even with the fire, Kanagi is not shaken because he is still recognized by the flames. Hinohara draws his sword to defend himself from the fire and still threatens Kanagi, but Shinshou knows that the boy is not capable of hurting an unarmed opponent. He takes the sword, but before he can strike back, Konoha appears worried and ends up surrounded by fire. This awakens memories of Emisu in him. Kanen also arrives and sees the situation as Arata enters the middle of the fire to protect her. Kanagi begins to feel pain in his shoulder and hears a female voice before throwing himself into the flames to save the youngsters as well. Shinshou ends up fainting and Konoha tries to heal the burn on his shoulder, but Kanet recognizes that it looks like an old wound. The guy wakes up and sees the image of Emisu in Konoha's place. He remembers and tells of the past with Emisu when they had to flee their homeland by boat. They found people on the island who helped them, but on a stormy night, when Kanagi was sick, they went to look for medicinal herbs even against Ohika's will. When Kanagi woke up, he saw the fire at the top of the land rise and went to the place. Their Emisu was surrounded by flames and a jet almost knocked him down. He persisted and climbed up but could only see the girl being swallowed by the fire. Then he offered his life to the deity of the flames, wanting to join her. The deity Homura hears his prayers and chooses him as her own Shu. That is why the man wants Hayagami back so badly. Thinking about all this, Hinohara makes a proposal. He asks Kanagi to join him to help change this world. At night, Katawaki is frustrated and knocking everything down. He sees a picture of the running club in which he is together with Hinohara holding a prize, and the guy steps on the picture. Arata is trying to figure out who Hinohara's friends are. He sees Subaru on the street through the window and goes up to the boy to ask if they are friends. Suguru thinks that this question is because Hinohara heard what he told Katawaki earlier. He begins to cry, saying that he was weak and apologizes. Arata concludes that they are friends but is still in doubt about Katawaki and asks if Suguru knows where he is. At this moment, Katawaki prepares to leave the house but is scolded by his father, who says that his son doesn't study and just hangs out. He doesn't do anything at all, so he's no good at anything. The boy mentions the young woman his father is flirting with, and this annoys the man, who slaps him, saying that it is because of this behavior that his mother left him. Meanwhile, Kanagi is with Arata's group and comments on a group of 6 Shu, whom he has never seen the faces of. These Shinshou only come together at ceremonial times. After this, we see these masked Shinshou gathered near the Kando forest, talking about what happened to Arata. They know that the boy is from another world, so they have a plan to defeat Tsukuyo. One of them with white hair takes off his mask before entering the forest. In the meantime, Katawaki meets his friends, so to speak, who are talking bad about him at this very moment. He curses the guys who are willing to fight, but Arata shows up saying that it's not fair and will help Katawaki. The bully just gets angry that the guy is always so calm while remembering the day of the race at the elementary school. After Arata's mother arrives, Katawaki leaves. He remembers the way his father treated him, his mother leaving, and his friends talking bad about him. In a hallway, the boy stops to remember when he started to hate Hinohara. Meanwhile, the white-haired Shinshou is in the forest performing a ritual. When the boy says that he intends to eliminate Hinohara, the two unite, just as the Aratas did. The Shinshou releases a beam of light that shows images of Hinohara in the boy's mind, and the two exchange places. Then the student leaves the forest and finds the other 5 Shu. The group takes the boy to receive a Hayagami, a dark sword kept among sinister statues. Like Tsukuyo, this Hayagami named Orochi has been asleep for a long time. When Katawaki picks up the weapon, other Shinshou far away notice, and even Hinohara feels something in his hand. A dark aura begins to cover the boy, who struggles mentally, focusing on knocking Hinohara out. A dark face appears in his thoughts, and the student finally removes the sword from the scene, letting out a sadistic smile. The next day, Hinohara's group is found by Katawaki. Kanagi realizes that the boy is a Shu. Katawaki pulls Hayagami and summons the Orochi towards Arata, who defends himself with the Tsukuyo. Katawaki then begins to sneer at Hinohara for running away to this world, calling him a coward and pathetic, bragging about the bullying he was committing. Hinohara becomes more serious and tells the guy to shut up. A dark aura appears on his Hayagami now, and Arata shoots this energy towards Katawaki, who has managed to avoid some of the damage with a shield of darkness. Arata begins to be consumed by the aura, and Kanaji says that he will become a demon, but Kotoha runs to him trying to avoid this disaster. When she says she trusts him, Arata awakens, but before Katawaki can continue the confrontation, the masked Shinshou appears saying that there has been a change of plans and they need to fully awaken the Orochi. Hinohara throws down the sword, and Kanaji takes the opportunity to grab the weapon and flee, pursued by Kinet. Kotoha is down but conscious. At a hut, she asks Arata about this otherworldly talk and finally realizes that this guy is really someone else. Hinohara goes for a walk while Kinet finally catches up with Kanaji, who says he will be back. They go to Arata, and Shinshou forcefully returns the sword, seeing that the kid is unmotivated. He gives him a telling off, asking if this is how the guy intends to change the world. When the student asks if the guy doesn't want this Hayagami anymore, Kanaji replies that Tsukuyo is too heavy. He carries the weight of Arata's mission and responsibility. The next day, the boy shows more confidence. He intends to change the heart of Katawaki, who was his friend before, and promises that he will not become a demon. Kotoha is touched and the two hug. Sometime later, they go to the nearest town because Arata wants to meet some Zokusho from this region to know what kind of Shinshou is Yorinami that dominates this area. The town is called Suzukura. Kanaji tells them that the Zokusho here are called Hiruko. At the entrance, they find out they have to pay a fee to enter and leave the city. They don't have money for everyone, but a guy named Suhiro appears and takes care of the group. Inside the city is really beautiful, at least in the main street. The group is put to work in the quarry, and Arata realizes that Suhiro is influential and may be able to lead them to Zokusho. He also realizes that there are even children working there. The next day, they see the boy named Ruka being punished for breaking a wheelbarrow, even though he says he didn't do it. As a result, the boss fires the boy and even leaves him without pay with the excuse of using it to cover repairs. This infuriates Kenneth, but before he can make a slip-up, Sugihiro shows up saying that fights are forbidden in this town. The group goes to his house, a crumbling shack in a much more humble area of town just off the main street. Ruka tells them that he lost his parents a year ago and is now living on his own. Kenneth is angry that everything in this town revolves around money and reputation. Welcome to the world, kid. And he is willing to help Ruka get out of this town, even though he has an expensive fee to do so. Later, on the flying boat, Katawaki and the masked men meet Akachi. The boy comes down summoning the Orochi, but doesn't start a fight. He just invites the guy to join him since Kanaji has joined Hinohara, but Akachi disdains this attitude. However, the boy is desperate not to be overtaken by Arata. Akachi puts the spear near the student's face and tells him that he has an illusion because he is too attached to Hinohara and won't be able to defeat him this way. Then the guy hits him in the eye, saying that it will help. Meanwhile, as Arata's group leaves town, Sugihiro appears and reveals himself to be Zokusho Hiruko, showing the Hayagami. Hinohara also prepares for combat. Zokusho remembers when he went to the Shinshou Yorinami, disappointed that people only approached him for money, but the Shinshou said there is no one unnecessary. The two summon their powers, and it is shown that Hiruko's Kamui creates money. That must be the best power. He lets his guard down and says that he has been watching Arata for a long time and maybe he is the chosen one. Then he tells Ruka that he will change the city, going against Yorinami's orders, and asks Arata to bring back the old Yorinami he knew. The next day, while Arata is reflecting near a lake, he hears a scream from Kotoha and goes to her when the girl is pulled by a sphere of water. Kanaji realizes that this was done by Yorinami. Then Hinohara goes running to the nearby town where the Shinshou will probably be, and the other two run after him. Arata arrives first and finds her trapped in a dome which begins to fill with water. The boy even tries to use Hayagami's power to free her, but it doesn't work. At that moment, Yorinami appears walking on the water. Shinshou says that she will only be released if Arata submits or makes him submit to Arata, but the student doesn't agree with this. After that, we see what happened to Katawaki after he lost his right eye. He shows that he is willing to do anything to get Hinohara, so Akachi does something bizarre. He gives the student his own eye. Back in the present in the city, Yorimeni makes a water dragon and traps Hinohara in a sphere, which Hiruko recognizes as a time reversal technique. Inside this sphere, the boy feels comfortable and has the illusion of being at home with his mother, except that she asks him to recite the promise of submission. Of course, he doesn't, so the Shinshou takes him even further back in time, as a child with his mother, comforting him for his school problems and telling him again to say the promise. Even with him being a toddler, nothing works, and Yorinami is surprised by this feat, as he thought he would obey his mother. When the guy decides to eliminate Hinohara, the boy opens his eyes and hears Konoha's voice in his head. After that, he goes back to his normal size, and in the illusion, he says goodbye to his mother, coming back with an intense glow that undoes the Shinshou technique and spreads luminous particles everywhere. Everyone sees the boy high up inside his sphere holding Kotoha. Frustrated, Yorinami tries to attack, but realizes that Hayagami has abandoned him. He runs into the palace where there was a sphere of water holding a standing garment, which he calls his mother. One of the villagers tells that he lost his mother years ago. The guy remembers the past and how his mother was rigid about his mistakes. This made him want to be perfect, but even after becoming a Shinshou, his mother didn't change. On the altar was a package from a gift his mother gave him before she left, but he never opened it. When he opens the package, he finds a necklace, which he himself had made for his mother as a child and which she rejected, saying that he should use his time better. An old man there tells him that his mother just didn't want him to grow up weak, but that she loved him just the way he was, she just couldn't show it. This whole situation makes the guy cry and recognize that Arata freed him from a curse. He asks forgiveness from the people for the mistakes he made in this town. All he wanted was Hayagami Tsukuyo to become the great king and make his own mother proud. After he becomes more friendly with Arata, Katawaki appears at the palace door carrying his sword. He comes forward to attack and Hinohara defends himself. The impact causes destruction to the palace structure and a strong windstorm. Arata runs out after this and Katawaki goes after him. Konoha asks Kanagi to help Hinohara, but he says this is the guy's fight. No one should interfere. Kanet says they would only get in the way, so they should believe their friend. The two continue the fight, and when Hinohara starts releasing Hayagami's power, Kanet says that he still has to get to the princess. Konoha also shouts, saying that everyone trusts him. This reminds him of the people who have already said this. To help Arata, Yorinami decides to submit and join his Hayagami. The shoe turns into a small sphere of energy, which then spreads and joins with the sword. This increases Tsukuyo's power so powerfully that it causes an explosion of light power, destroying everything around. The two are still fighting and again summon their Hayagamis for the final showdown, where the weapons collide and again unleash a strong impact wave. Thankfully, there's nothing left to destroy. More confident than ever, Hinohara wins the contest of strength, knocking his opponent out. He then makes the sword glow and concentrates on Cosmos, making the earth shake. Suddenly, towers of stone begin to emerge from the water along the plane of earth. In other words, the boy has created an island. A strong light illuminates him when Hinohara invokes an even more extraordinary power. Tsukuyo now appears in a shape resembling two gigantic wings. He says he will not surrender and directs all this energy at Katawaki. He stands for a few seconds, but the power doesn't stop emanating from Hinohara until the wave gets so strong that it knocks him off the rock, thus ensuring Hinohara's victory. After this, the Zokushu of Yorinami decide to join their former master and also submit to Hinohara. Later, he tells Arata in Japan what happened. This season ends with Arata going to his friends to make a promise that he will change this world, Katawaki's heart, and himself.